Stephanie, welcome to Wealth Talk.
Christian, it's lovely to be here. Thank you.
Stephanie, very much looking forward to hearing your story, your journey today. And why don't we kick off by just letting our listeners know a little bit about what you do and really the strategies that you're focusing on within the property investment industry.
Well, we run HMO Heaven, a property management company, and we obviously invest in properties ourselves as well. And we accidentally stumbled upon a strategy which has proved to be very fruitful, and that is multi-unit blocks. And I think that's one of the things that we're going to be talking about today.
Okay. Yeah, we are indeed. So for someone who perhaps hasn't got an idea what a multi-unit block is, what exactly are we talking about here?
Well, I'll be honest with you, Christian. The first time I heard it called a multi-unit block was by the lenders, the commercial finance lenders. They refer to them as multi-unit blocks, and that's just sort of come into my parlance now. But it's what people would know as converted flats. Typically, it'll be a house converted into self-contained units, and all on one title. That's how we like them, usually in bad condition and all on one title.
Okay. And you're in Wales, Stephanie.
Yeah, yeah.
And is this something that you've spotted? Is this a particular kind of niche that is in your area? Are you seeing people around the rest of the UK also
Yeah,
finding this favourable?
all around the UK. How we fell into it, Christian? Many people fall into good things from bad things. So we were trying to buy HMOs, and there was a lot of competition, and we kept missing out. Sometimes it was lender downvaling. Sometimes it was that there was so much competition for each property that the prices went beyond what we were prepared to pay. And so we started looking at properties that were a bit larger, and that is how we came across the one that we bought last year, which is a 12 unit property, 10 studios. Well, they're not quite studios, but I'll just for brevity say 10 studios, to a two-bedroom flat and a little shop on the front. And some of the benefits that we found through buying these multi-unit blocks is that the cost of buying 12 properties, even in Wales, which is much cheaper than a lot of areas of the country, is much less when you buy them all in one. So, for example, the property that we bought there was £375,000, which equates to less than £32,000 per unit. Now, the rental income for majority of them, for 10 of them, is £450 a month. For the two-bedroom flat is £600 a month, and for the little shop is £300 a month. So I sailed that, so £450 a month. Now, even in the valleys of Wales, which is much cheaper than where we are in Newport, you cannot buy a single rental unit, a house or a flat, for £32,000. And the rental income you get in from that £60,000 flat will be very similar to that £450 that we're getting. So there's immense leverage within this multi-unit block. And this was sort of a bit of a revelation to me when I was going over the numbers and looking at, oh my gosh, £32,000 per unit. That's incredible. And actually, before then, we also have some other multi-unit blocks. One is a commercial property that we bought with intention to convert to an HMO, but our architect actually came up with 4 self-contained units, which works beautifully. And another one that we bought is it's already been converted into 4 flats, but it wasn't quite finished, and it was, I wouldn't say done badly, but there was still a lot to do, which means a lot of potential there to add value. And so we have that one as well. And what we want to do going forward is to continue with this strategy.
And how much of a step up is this strategy, Stephanie, from typical buy to let? Like, how much more is involved when it gets to the size of kind of 12 plus units?
Well, yes, the 12 plus units, especially if it involves commercial, you have got more challenges there on managing. Now, if you have a great team in place to manage your properties for you, or you're quite confident about self-managing, then that's fine. But that would be a barrier. The next thing that would be a barrier, more fundamentally, is the finance for that type of property is more restricted. So, first of all, if your property includes a commercial element, then you will need commercial property finance. And that tends to be more demanding in terms of what you need to be able to prove about yourself. So usually they will want to see experience of ownership and management of a similar sized commercial element property. So that again is restricted. But the thing where I feel that this strategy is really fantastic for beginners is where you buy, we will have all have seen, you can go to Rightmove right now and find them in your area, is one house has been converted into 2 flats or 3 flats. That is ideal. If you're a very beginner, then you might want to do that with friends or family members and each live in a flat, or live in the flat to start off with, and then rent your flat out as you move up the property ladder, and so on. So there's lots of ways that you might be able to get in as a beginner, starting off with smaller number of units and all residential, which is easier to finance and manage, and then moving up to bigger units. For a more experienced investor, it's no jump at all.
Mm. And then from kind of where the multi-unit blocks sit, is that covering almost the B&B type property as well, Stephanie?
I don't know what you mean.
Okay, so bed and breakfasts now that often are coming onto the market, and a lot of our members and community are looking at that kind of strategy of taking over a B&B. So would you call that part of the multi-block strategy?
Yes, in fact, you're getting a bit ahead, because the strategies that I'm very excited about for this year and moving forwards as we go into probable recession, falling property prices, etc., is, yes, commercial to residential is going to be phenomenal, and especially all over the country, but especially in areas like ours, where there's no permitted development, because it means fewer other people are going for the same properties. But the particular categories of commercial property that I think are going to be offer a special opportunity are care homes and B&Bs. The reasons why these are especially opportune is because they tend to be low profit businesses. That means that the purchase price is lower. It means that the financing options are usually lower. The percentage loan to value is usually lower, because the banks like to be cautious, especially at the moment. So what all that means is that the owners are often open to a creative strategy, such as a lease option, exchange with late completion, etc., which mean that you're able to buy the property without tying so much money up into it.
Yeah. So we've talked about pricing. Obviously, pricing really favourable. Profitability, and then conversion. Some of the costs. So do maybe have some case study just to give our members a little bit of an idea. Just how profitable these opportunities can be.
Yeah. So what with the let's just use that 12 unit then as an example, and we've got the purchase price 375, so we've got £100,000 tied up in that property. At the moment, the rent, the net rent is around 42,000, and it's at the moment we're getting a 42% return on that cash that's invested. But we do anticipate to be able to retake all that out when we refinance, because we were very fortunate with the valuation, because as anybody who's buying properties knows, oftentimes the lender valuation can be lower than the price agreed. And that had been happening quite a bit in Newport previously. And so when we agreed our purchase price of 375, and then the lenders got involved, and then they sent their own team of valuers, their own valuer rather, to value it, we were concerned that it would come in a bit lower. But actually, we were very fortunate in that the valuation, this is before purchase, so before any refurbishment or etc., was £500,000. So we were very fortunate in that on paper, where the property is worth much more. And the other great thing about this, Christian, was that the 10 studios, which take up the bulk of the property, were massively undersold, if you will, in rental income terms, because when we bought the property, they were rented out for £260 each. Now, in our area, £400 is a very average for a room, and these are almost studios. So we're renting them out post refurb at £450 a month. Now, as you know, with commercial property, the value of the property is in part determined by the rental income. And so our rental income per unit on those studios has gone from 260 to 450. So although we haven't had the property actually revalued since the refurbishment, we forecast that the value will have increased dramatically from what it was at purchase. So we think we'll be able to cash out. Do you have any other numbers that you were interested in?
No. And I mean, I guess as well, because you're kind of stepping up slightly from standard buy-to-lets, in terms of competition, the air's a little bit thinner out there.
Yeah, you would be surprised, because it's actually not that big a leap, because you can see by the numbers I've talked about there, 375, that's not a stratospheric. But there are much fewer people who, A, are even looking at this, and B, who have the skills to be able to either manage it or have a team to manage it. You would think that most people would have that, but actually no. The very fact that it has the little shop on the front puts people off as well. And also, as I said, the financing, it's more challenging on the finance front. But newer people can partner with experienced people to be able to move forward with projects like this.
Yeah, that was actually going to be a question that I had, Stephanie, is, what do you find holds people back from actually taking that step?
I think people overestimate the complexity of something like this as compared with managing 12 single lets. Most people, if they're on this journey, well, let's make it a bit more achievable. Let's say 6. Say you had the opportunity to buy a block of 6, or you would be managing the 6 single lets. Most people wouldn't think twice about gradually building up to 6 single lets, but they would perhaps balk at the idea of buying 6 all in a block. And actually, in actual fact, 6 all in a block is easier. The first time you do it, you will have to overcome some challenges that we've talked about financing and about the right kind of experience. But once you've done that once, it's done, and all of your costs, your management, your refinance is all in one place. And that it just lightens, because imagine us moving forward, if we want to move towards 100 owned rental units, how much easier is it for us to do that in blocks of 12 or 24 or more than it would be to buy 100 single let units with 100 rooms and 100 boilers and all of that extra complexity. So in my experience, this is actually a much simpler strategy.
Mm-hmm. So it's really interesting, Stephanie, and I really want to now, for our listeners, just rewind a little bit, because it was only just a few years ago that you were kind of finding your route into property, and to hear where you're at now is just incredible, and congratulations for that. But tell us a little bit about the steps that have come before reaching the multi-block unit strategy?
Yeah, it's I sometimes, Christian, have difficulty believing of where we are. I went to look at that property we've just talked about, and we had an interior designer for the first time, and I was just looking around thinking, I can't believe that I'm here. And I one of the neighbors came up and she was asking our builder, what we're doing with the shop, and I just sort of joined the conversation, and I was explaining we hadn't decided what we were going to do with the shop and talking about the ideas we had, and she was just visibly really taken aback that I own the building and the shop, and I was able to show her some of the other units and so on. But I'm also taken aback because how it all started out was that it started off as a teenage mum, really struggling financially, but not only that, really struggling, low self-esteem and low goals really about what sort of things that I felt that I could achieve in life. And it's been a long and winding road to where we are now. But to fast forward a little bit for the sake of brevity, about 5 years ago, I was working in a bank as a contractor, reasonably well paid, and I had my mum got ill. And I think, and when I listen to your podcast, Christian, you hear the stories of when people make the decision, and it's often everyday things happen, and it just triggers something inside them which makes them think, right, this is it, I've got to change, or I've got to do something different. And for me, it was my mum called me one morning. I was getting ready for work. I was living in Bristol. I was living in a lovely harbourside flat. My job at the bank was just a hop, skip and a jump, a lovely walk, and I enjoyed life to a certain degree. But when mum called me, I was sort of rushing her off the phone, sort of thinking about all the things that I had on for that day, presentations, and was I going to be late? And, I don't really have time. And the thing is, she was calling me in the morning because she was ill at that time. She wasn't feeling too good. I'm just speculating that she just needed a bit of reassurance. And it was when I was sitting at my desk that afternoon, I just thought, this doesn't matter. I'm making the bank the most important thing in my life, and actually it doesn't matter. And, my relationships matter. It matters that I'm there for mum. It matters, those are the things that matter. So I thought, how can I make my life able for me to live in the way that I value, so that my values match up with my actions? And I just thought it's business, but I didn't feel that I had the skills to be able to go into business. It felt like there's all these secrets that people know that I don't know, and I'm not from that business world. And so I then mulled on it for a while, and I came up with property because I see that normal people, or ordinary people, as I thought, going into property and giving up their 9-to-5 jobs. And I thought, I could potentially do that. Why don't I look into that more? And it just sort of all went on from there, Christian, that I just put one step in front of the other, and eventually started off myself.
Yeah. And what was your first first foray into property? How do you generate your first £100 or your first £500?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's just takes me back. I was so lucky, Christian, because my sister Nikki, I told her about this property idea, and she came in with me. Thank goodness for that, because we may have time to come on to that later, but she came in with me, and I had heard, I was going to different property events and listening and thinking, oh my gosh, that's so incredible what all these people are doing, developments, new builds. But the stories obviously that I could relate to most were people who just seemed ordinary people like me, starting off with not a huge amount of money, and making it work in property. And I heard about rent to rent, and I didn't have a huge amount of confidence about my business savvy, shall we say. And so I thought, I can do that because I saw that lots of people were doing house share management badly, HMO management badly. And I thought, I can do that better simply by adding care. And so that's how we started off in rent to rent, and we set up HMO Heaven, which is an HMO management company.
And then how long did it take to transition, to a point where you had enough income being generated from property to start covering your lifestyle?
Right. Well, I at the time when I had this light bulb moment was 45. And so I moved pretty quickly after years of sort of decades of not very much happening. It sort of all was, it was almost like that. So at the beginning of January, I started going to these events and I was still contracting in Bristol. And I decided Newport was the place in Wales. It's near Cardiff, not too far from Bristol, about an hour. And so I was coming over to Newport to do the viewings on weekends. And I had, from what I'd gleaned from books, etc., it was going to take a little while before I was to get any property. So worthwhile to start asking well in advance of needing. But we were fortunate in that one of the very first properties that we viewed, we got, and in fact, it wasn't one property; it was two from the same landlord, and and that was in the June of 2016. So the January I started investigating. In the June of 2016, we hear that we've got this property. So I'm still working at the bank in Bristol, and I was so excited. I could hardly think straight. I was all property, and so they offered me to would I like to extend my contract um, for another 6 months, which would have been the sensible thing to do. But I did have some savings, and I couldn't think about anything else. So I just said no. I won't extend. I moved to Newport. I moved into one of the two properties, which were both empty because we were refurbing them, and it all went from there. And I just thought, right, we'll use our savings until we can afford to start paying ourselves a little bit, and then, and if it doesn't work out, we can always go back to work.
Yeah, and so and then within 6 months.
Oh, how long did it take? So the properties started cash flowing. Oh, we spent a fortune on those properties. Yeah, we spent a fortune on those properties due to haplessness and greenery, and so what we'd said was that when we were making a certain amount, now I can't remember what the cash flow amount was, we were going to start paying ourselves £500 a month each, which wouldn't have been enough to cover, but it sort of helps our savings to stretch on for longer. So I would say within the first year we started that, and then we put it up to 1,000, and then gradually we put it up more. Um, but as I say, we couldn't have done it if we didn't have the savings, and also the fact that we didn't have, my son was growing up, we didn't have responsibilities in that sense, like a family, and all of that. So we could live off savings.
Yeah, yeah. So we're talking really from where we are today, Stephanie, 5 years that you've built up the rent-to-rent business, which has led into obviously, the HMO management and now the multi-blocks. So when you look back and think 5 years, how does that make you feel?
I just feel so delighted that I started because I had so much doubt and fear to overcome, and mindset is talked about so much in property, isn't it, Christian? It's all, but it's so true that at the time I didn't have the mindset to feel that I could get straight in and start buying properties, or receiving finance from people, or any of that. But I had enough confidence to think I can manage properties with care, and that's what we did, and that's where we started. So yeah, I'm just delighted that I started, because so many of us don't start, and for many, 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 many years, I didn't start anything new or that could take me towards dreams. Even the dreams were too big for
Yeah.
my mind at the time. So yeah.
So no regrets, and you don't wish you were still sat behind that desk right now.
Definitely not. And the incredible thing is that each step leads to the next step. So we had the rent to rent business, and then we started buying the properties, and we also, as a result of that, everyone, not everyone, but a lot of people were asking, oh, how do you do that? How do you send your letters? How do you get the deals and so on? And we started also a training company for rent to rent, and that helped us move forward a lot in terms of our mindset as well, because we're helping people get past their mindset blocks, and that helps us also get past our new mindset blocks. And as the final part to, not well, I'm sure it won't be the final part to it, but as another piece to it, we originally heard of you because we're setting up a SSAS pension as well, so that we can more efficiently use the profits from our business to continue investing in property and other assets.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we talk about, connections, relationships, ideas. Everything just leads to something else, doesn't it? And no, it's wonderful that we've managed to connect and hear your story today. Just finally, Stephanie, what's your vision? Where do you see things? Where would you like things to be in the next 5 years or so?
Well, we really want to build on all of the three businesses. We want to move our assets up from where they are now, where we own 28 units, up to 100 units. And the one thing that's really been important to us is doing business for good. And one of the things that really helped with that was a podcast I listened to, and it was all about the 1% pledge. And it was about giving consistently from wherever you are right now. And although we were already giving to charity, it was sort of hit and miss here and there. And when I heard this 1% pledge, it just really changed the way that I was thinking about business. And what it says is that you can give 1% of where you are now. So it might be 1% of your salary, it might be 1% of your income, it might be 1% of your revenue, 1% of your profit, 1% of your time. So it means everyone can give. And for most of us who are watching or listening to this, we actually think, oh, 1%, that's actually not enough. I can actually do a lot more than that. And so we signed up with a B1G1, which stands for buy one, give one. And so we're giving every day through our business, and that just feels phenomenally good. And we obviously want to grow that element of things. So if anyone's listening today and they want to take one thing away from this, I would love it to be that, and for them to start giving in the 1% pledge.
That's wonderful. Yeah, big shout out to Paul Dunn and Masami there for B1G1 initiative.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Stephanie. I hope and I'm sure that everyone listening today will be inspired by your story. And you have so much information that you actually give out yourself. You've been very humble today, but I know you have a book, you have a podcast. And where's the best place for someone to go if they just want to connect with you online, Stephanie, and see what else you're up to?
Brilliant. Well, we have a website at hmoheaven.co.uk, and on there you can see this 12-unit block and some before and after pictures there. And that's all about the HMO management side. If anybody's interested in finding out more about rent to rent, we also have a website at renttoRentSuccess.com, and you can get some information and free guides there too.
Thanks so much for sharing today, Stephanie.
Thank you.